Hello, and welcome to the Rossaround Backstage Podcast, talking with artists, technicians, musicians, producers, directors, and all the interesting and talented people that make it all happen for you. Hi, everybody. This is Ross Pallone with the Rossaround Backstage Podcast. I am here today with Kenny Aronoff. He is one of the world's most influential and in-demand drummers. Rolling Stone, in fact, cited him as one of the 100 greatest drummers of all time. The list of artists he has worked with on the road and or in the studio reads like the who's who of the music industry, which includes John Mellencamp, the Rolling Stones, Smashing Pumpkins, and many, many, many others. His unique and versatile sound has been instrumental in over 60 Grammy-nominated or awarded recordings representing over 300 million in sales, with more than 1,300 that were RI certified gold, platinum, or diamond. So it's a great honor for me to be here with you, Kenny, and I'd like to ask you, so how did this all start for you? How did you get into this business?
Well, I grew up in western Massachusetts, and me and my brother were playing outside one day, and there was never anything to watch on TV. And my mom screamed at us one night, like, "Guys, you got to come in right now." And we thought we were in trouble. And when we got into the family room, she was pointing to this black and white RCA TV set we had with the rabbit ears and the tinfoil clumped on the top to get better reception, which never worked.
Right.
We were in the mountainous area of Western Mass. Anyway, on the TV was the Ed Sullivan Show, and there were four guys with long hair, dressed in suits, tapping their feet, playing electric guitars and bass and drums. You know what I'm talking about. And then the lead singer goes up to the mic and goes, "She loves you, yeah, yeah, yeah." And I went, holy, can I swear?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
All you want.
Holy shit. What the fuck is this? And I'm like, I could not believe it. I was like bouncing off the walls. I mean, I was electrified. It was like so off the charts. All I know is I wanted to be part of it. But I literally said to my mom, "Who are these guys?" I'm only 10 years old. She says, "Well, they're the Beatles." I says, "Well, I want to play in the Beatles. Call them up. I want to play with them. And I want to play drums." and I'd be, I was 10. That's what you say. And I'd been taking piano lessons, but when it wasn't vibrating in me that well. And I said, "Mom, I want to play drums. I want to play drums. I need a drum set." Well, she obviously didn't call the Beatles up, and she didn't buy me a drum set. But 2 weeks later, I started my own band. I had only a snare drum and a cymbal standing up, and we played Beatles music.
Oh, nice.
But here's the killer thing. 50 years later, I'm performing on a CBS special, a tribute, to the Beatles called "The Night That Changed America," right here in L.A., and it was honoring the Beatles for that Ed Sullivan Show, and I'm performing with the two remaining Beatles, Ringo Starr and Paul McCartney.
Nice.
You can only imagine what I was saying, and a slew of others like Stevie Wonder, Dave Grohl, John Mayer, Keith Urban, Joe Walsh, on and on and on. And we're honoring them for the 72 million people that had seen that show when I was a little kid. I mean, that's the amazing thing. So after I'm done playing with, all these different artists, the show was still going. I went into the audience to find my wife. She was sitting out there, and there were these elite seats. And there's Tom Hanks and his wife, Ringo Starr and his wife, Paul McCartney, and then, George Harrison's widow, Sean Lennon, Yoko Ono, and some celebrity actors like Sean Penn, Tom Cruise, and Johnny Depp. And I'm walking by them. They're all acknowledging me. Tom Hanks and I know each other real well because I did that movie, That Thing You Do. I played a lot of drums on that. But the point is, there's Ringo. And they're all sitting down, clapping at me and going, "Bravo, Mr. Aronoff. Bravo, Kenny." Now, I'd met him. I'd played with him. I'd played the Grammys the night before with him. But I'd never had an intimate moment with him. And I was so humbled by this whole experience of what I had just gone through. And I got down on one knee because it was in the middle of this huge arena. Everyone's looking at me. So I got on one knee to kind of just talk to him. And he goes, "That's okay. I'm already married." I went, no, I'm not proposing to you, as I'm looking at his wife. I said, "I just wanted to tell you," and I felt like a sort of awkward, but I just didn't know what anything else to say, but I wanted to tell you that, I'm grateful that, I wouldn't be playing drums if I hadn't seen you when I was that little kid. I wouldn't be playing in a rock and roll band if I hadn't seen you when I was a little kid. And you set me on a course when I was 10 years old that I'm still on. And I am eternally grateful. That's what I wanted to give him back. And he was so appreciative. And, I really believe that people are successful in their life and their career, if they can find their bliss, which they essentially, that's what the Beatles and Ringo did. And if bliss means, your extreme happiness. They made me, and then I went a step further that later on, recently, I realized, in order to realize your bliss, you have to realize what your higher purpose in life is. And I figured out my higher purpose, without even knowing it as a kid, was to make people feel happy. Or make people feel good. That's it. Make people feel good. Because, now check this out. Because I started thinking about, when I was a little kid, I was drawn, probably like you, I was drawn to playing an instrument, in my case the drums, and playing in a band because it made me feel good. But then, when you're playing in a band, I noticed with my extreme energy and excitement, I got the guys in the band excited, and then I realized they were excited, and it made me feel even better. That look what's happening here. Then when you perform in front of people, and I've done, as many as 5 to 1 million people, you get that reciprocated back from the audience. You're making them feel good, then they make you feel good, because how could you not feel good with them, clapping and going nuts? And when I was younger with the Mellencamp band, we had girls throwing underwear and bras at us. That made me feel pretty good,
Yeah.
I thought that was all right. So this thing, I realized that my higher purpose is to make people feel good, and when they feel good, I feel amazing. So I, as a little kid, the first band I played in was called the Alley Cats. That was the band, the Alley Cats. And there were no mentors where I grew up. There was nobody to teach me how to play rock drums. It was all new. I grew up in a town of 3,000. There was nobody who said, "Ken, you want to be a rock star? This is how you do it." There was none of that back then. So I just played in bands, and I was always one of the best drummers in the area. And it was a great time in rock and roll because there was no electronic anything. I mean, meaning there was no, there was no downloading of music. There was no programmed drums. If you wanted a drummer, you had to hire a drummer.
Yeah,
so,
those are the great.
Yeah.
Those are the great days.
And it was all about jamming and relationships and playing live. Everything was live. There was no backing tracks. You had to be a great musician. And back then, the rule was you practiced your butt off to be the best that you can be so you could play in a band, which made me feel good. And then you get to experience this experience, and then you get in better bands, and then better bands, and maybe you get in a band that gets a record deal, and then you do what I always wanted to do, which was be in a band like the Beatles where you tour and you make records. And that was it. That was, there was no video games. There was nothing. On TV, it was The Wizard of Oz, maybe a Christmas show. You have Christmas and Thanksgiving and Trick or Treat, and your birthday. Those were the excitements in your life back then. So rock and roll was like, woo! It was like a drug for me.
Now, did you take lessons when you were 10 years old?
This is exactly what happened. So there was, when I was a kid, they wanted me to play in the fourth grade. Fourth grade, they want you to play in the little band or something, marching band stuff. So I took lessons, but I didn't like playing that. First of all, they gave me a rubber pad. I'm like, what? No drum set. Then I get a snare drum. That's boring. I want to play in a rock band. I was already playing in a rock band, so all that was like secondary. So it was kind of hard for me to get excited to play in any of the high school functions or the junior high functions, the symphony band, the concert band, the marching band, when I was playing in clubs, doing Hendrix, Zeppelin, the Rolling Stones, the Beatles, you name it. I mean, I was way hipper than doing that.
Yeah.
But there was some kid in my town that was getting a little better. And I said to him, "Man, what are you doing?" He says, "Oh, well, I'm taking lessons from the principal percussionist from the Boston Symphony Orchestra." And the orchestra, the summer festival, was 3 miles from my house where I grew up. So I started taking lessons with this guy. And man, this guy, first lesson, I show up. I'm hungover because I was a three-letterman jock, and I was hanging out the night before with the cheerleaders from the football team, all the seniors, and they dug me because I was this hyper. Well, they just dug me. So I'm hanging out, drinking vodka and stuff, and I get on a bus from Western Mass to Boston. It's a 2-hour drive. I think I was in the bathroom the whole time. When I get to this, my point is I get to this guy's house, Arthur Press, and he's
his name again?
Arthur Press. I couldn't remember his name, and my mom went, "How could you not remember his name? That's my maiden name." She never let me down. Forget that. But this guy, it wasn't Whiplash, but it was close. And he goes, "What's your name, son?" I went, "Kenny." "Kenny what?" So Kenny Aronoff. "What have you prepared for me today?" I'm like, "Huh? Have you prepared a marimba piece, a mallet piece for me?" I'm like, I don't play mallets. Then he looked at me, kind of like, "Well, did you prepare a timpani piece for me?" I went, "Never played timpani in my life." Now I'm like shrinking down to a size of a snail. He's looking at me like, "Well, then why are you here?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, what did I get myself into?" He says, "Well, what do you play?" I said, "Well, I play drum set." "Well, come on down. Let's hear you play some drums." Sits me on a drum set, puts on Spinning Wheels by Blood, Sweat, and Tears. And I'd been playing along with it. That's what I used to do. I used to put records on, play along, self-taught. And in about 30 seconds, he physically yanks me off the drum stool and pushes me toward a practice pad. He says, "We got a lot of work to do." Now, that was a key moment. I could have gone, "Hell with this, I'm out of here." But something in my DNA said, "No, you need this." I'd never experienced a teacher like this or anything like this, except for maybe my coaches on athletic teams. There was no hand-holding or coddling. I'm not a guy who believes everyone should get a trophy. I believe if you want a trophy, you earn it. Not everybody gets a trophy. You lose, you don't get a trophy. You win, you get a trophy. It's the wrong message. Not everybody should win.
Exactly.
You fight to win. Yeah. And that's what made me who I am today. Mm-hmm. That's what made my grandfather who he was. That's what made my dad who he is. I don't believe in hand-holding, and if you're not doing good, then work harder. And furthermore, if you do nothing, you get nothing. It's like math. Remember that equation? 0 equals 0? Mm-hmm. And if you think the shit's going to fall from the sky and land on your lap, you're hallucinating. And if you're waiting for it to come, I'm the guy who's going to steal it from you. Because I'm not purposely going to take it from you. But if it's sitting there and you're not going after it and I'm going after it, guess who gets it? Me. Man, I've made my career. Anyway, the point is I started practicing for this guy. And when it was time to go to college, everybody in my family went to college. It was the kind of the American way. You go to college, learn a trade, and then you get a job in that field. Well, the only major I thought that I'd want to do was music. So there was no school of rock back then. So now I'm looking at schools of music that taught classical music. So I got into the University of Massachusetts, an okay school, not one of the top ones. But, my teacher, Arthur Press, prepared me for that. Learned a mallet piece. My dad bought a secondhand set of vibes from Carol's Music in New York for $300, so I was learning scales, learned a piece. I borrowed timpani from somebody, and I practiced a snare drum piece. So I had snare drum, mallets, and timpani. And I'll never forget that audition. What they do a lot of times in these auditions, they put music up for you to sight read. Now, I stunk at that. So I do my mallet piece, not on vibes, but on a marimba. First time I ever touched one. And I did pretty bad. And then he put some music up, and I really stunk at that. I think I hit the first note right. Then I was lost. And then he goes, "Well, that's okay. All right." He starts to grab the music, and I grabbed it back and said, No, I can do this. I was embarrassed. And he kept trying to grab the music after every time I blew it. And I said, "No." And I kept grabbing it back. So, "No, I can do better." I just couldn't stomach leaving that moment as a failure. That's how I got into music school, he told me later. Because he went, "Well, I'm going to enjoy teaching this guy. This guy's a fighter. He wants to learn." So I got in, worked my butt off, and I realized how far behind I was. I played in a jazz band, played in rock bands like I always do, and I knew that I can't stay in this school. Even though I'm not the best, I need to be where the best is. So I heard of Eastman's, the top three music schools in classical music at that time were Eastman School of Music, Rochester, where Steve Gadd went, Juilliard, run by in New York, which is very New York Philharmonic influenced, and Indiana University, believe it or not, in Bloomington, biggest music school in the world, #1 school of music. And so there was this cellist that was there at that school who I thought was hot, was hot as a cellist can be in classical music. And I heard she was going to this thing in the summer called the Aspen School of Music. It was run by Juilliard. So I auditioned, and the way I auditioned is, I didn't do it in person. I sent a tape of me playing timpani, snare drum, etude, mallets, a marimba, and multiple percussion. And all you had to do was three of the four categories, but I did all four. I don't get in. It's like the last day of school. I'm packing up my dad's car. I got my summer plan. I got an Allman Brothers band I'm going to be playing in. I got lessons with the percussion with the Boston Symphony Orchestra. I got a girlfriend. It's going to be a great summer. And I'm leaving the campus. I went, oh, shit, I forgot my mail. I go back and, oh, I do have mail. And there's like a check. And I went, oh, I wonder who this is from. I open up, accepted to Aspen. And I have to be there in 2 weeks. So I'm thinking, I thought later on I must have been an alternate. Somebody canceled. I go there, and I'm nervous as shit. And I was really looking forward to being home with my brother and my parents. I hadn't, it was like a new thing. Me and my twin brother left home at the same time to go to college. So I was looking forward to it. But I knew in my gut that I needed to do this. Went there, worst percussionist there. All these kids were Juilliard prep. They were playing marimba, timpani, orchestral music when they were in their diapers. And what was I playing? Led Zeppelin, Beatles stuff. I get there, my reading skills stink. I got destroyed by the conductors. And I could see my teacher was a little bit embarrassed. And I felt like I was letting him down.
Did he go? He went with you?
No, this teacher was a teacher there, but guess what he taught? Indiana University.
Drums?
#1 school in percussion. #1 school in the country. And the guy was heavy, deep, smart, intuitive, worldly, well-read. All I knew is I want to go where he goes. So I demanded to audition to go to Indiana University. I went, well, why don't you keep practicing, come back in January and audition, go back to UMass. I went, no, now. I didn't know this about me until I wrote my autobiography, Sex, Drums, Rock and Roll, that I was pretty forward, like a fight guy, not a fight or flight guy. Well, no, I got to go now. We said, all right, well, okay, but to get into Indiana, you have to audition for 4 different departments. It just so happened there were people teaching there, brass, Phil Farkas, ex-Chicago Symphony Orchestra. He taught there at Indiana University. He was up at Aspen. Woodwind, strings, percussion, and I think even vocals. I audition, I get in. In 1 year after getting into UMass, I had auditioned to transfer to Eastman, got into Eastman, but they had no room for me. Got into the Aspen School of Music, even though I sucked, and I transferred to the #1 school of music. This was all the point of this. The takeaway is how I created that. I made that happen. I wasn't the best, but I forward thinking and aggressive pushing. I took action. That's the opposite of 0 = 0. And I didn't even realize this until I looked back that that's what I was doing. Survival. I wanted to go to the top, even though I wasn't good enough yet. So I get into Indiana University, and I spend 4 years there. And every year, I auditioned to get into the #1 student orchestra in the country, which is at Tanglewood, run by the Boston Symphony Orchestra, 3 miles from my house. First year I audition, strike out. Second year I audition, strike out. I'm auditioning for one of my heroes, Vic Firth, from the Vic Firth Stick Company. He was the timpanist of the Boston Symphony Orchestra. Then I take lessons from him one summer. Coolest dude in the world. Third year I audition, strike out. Fourth year, I get in. They accept 7 percussionists in the entire world. In that program, I got to perform under the conductor Leonard Bernstein, Aaron Copland, Sergio Zara, Arthur Fiedler. Then the bottom line is, I graduate from college, and I get a position in the Jerusalem Symphony Orchestra. which is a big deal because there aren't that many orchestras. If you get a job in an orchestra, you hold on to it because there aren't that many available.
Right.
I turned it down. I was absolutely in shock. I turned it down. After all that training, my parents were like, what? What's your plan? People were shocked. And the reason why, and here's the takeaway, the reason why I turned it down was my brain was saying, you got to do this, you got to do this. But my heart, which had already realized my purpose without me really consciously knowing it, was not only did I want to make people feel good, but I want to make me feel good. And playing, I still wanted to be in the Beatles or something like it.
Right.
And make records and play rock and roll. I mean, so I turned down security for possibility. Now, I spent the next 4 years not making it. Like, I practiced 8 hours a day. I lived at home, studied with Gary Chester out of New York, Alan Dawson, ex-Berklee School of Music. I'd never really had formal drum set lessons. So now I'm practicing 8 hours a day, 7 days a week, trying to catch up, realizing, oh my God, I got to catch up to Steve Gadd. Let's see, Billy Cobham, all these great drummers out there. There's a million of them. Everybody was amazing. I'm like, oh my God, what did I do? But what I didn't realize was, with my intense drive, I had kind of gone off the map of rock and roll, but I had developed skills that later on were going to make me different than any other rock and roll drummer, but it was going to take time. But I didn't know any of this. So I spent a year at home. Then I moved to Indiana and started a band with the idea we're going to get a record deal, make records, and tour. Yeehaw! I'm sleeping on a porch that they winterized at $62 a month. Give you an idea. I mean, I had like a little single piece of crap bed with electric blanket, a little bebop drum set, stereo, end table, and place to put my clothes. That was it. But I was living my dream. After 4 years, 1 year at home and 3 years in Indiana, 27, it didn't quite happen. And then I get my big break. All right, now let me jump ahead. I get a big break, but I'm going to jump ahead and then come back. Let's go ahead 2 years. With this band, I got a big break, and I'm in Criteria Studios in Miami, and I'm making a record, and it was the hardest record I've ever made in my life. And in walks the co-producer one day, Don Gaiman. He's got this metal box. I'm like, man, what's that? He says, oh, well, that's the Lin 1 drum machine. It's the coolest, newest, greatest, baddest ass thing happening today. And the Bee Gees are using it on their record next door. I'm like, oh, cool, that's great. What are we going to use it for? And he went, well, we're going to use it on this song that we're having trouble with. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? I'm going to be replaced by a machine? Okay. A
lot of drummers probably said that back in those days. Yeah. You're not the only one.
Yeah, I know. But let me bring us... The reason why this had such an impact on me was, let's go back to when I originally got into my big break.
Yeah, okay.
I get into this band. I'll tell you who the band... You already know who it is. I get in this band, and in 5 weeks, we're coming out here to record at Cherokee on Fairfax. You've been there. That had a reputation of wildness and debauchery. So we go in there. I'm staying on Sunset, the Chateau Marmont. Dude, I told everybody I made it. I reached my dream. I'm going to be in a band. We're making records. And this band's on MTV, and they go on tour and on the radio. And after 2 days of recording, the producer, Steve Cropper, and I didn't know, I thought it was my boss, decided, I got to get this record done fast. For people listening, back then there was no Pro Tools. It was, if a drummer makes a mistake, ideally you need the drummer to play a complete track, perfect with feel, parts, fills, creativity, vibe, tempo, everything. That's what was demanded from us. Had to have good equipment. You had to know how to tune. You had to be able to change out cymbals, heads. Your job was to do this in 1 take, or 2 takes, or 3 takes, or you were slowing down the whole session and adding dollars to the budget. That's what was expected, and that's what I demand from myself still. So the bottom line is, Steve Cropper saw that I was green, and I hadn't had any experience playing on records that go on the radio. So my boss is the one delivering message. we have a band meeting at the Chateau Marmont. He says, you're not playing on the record, you're fired. And I'm like, what? And as he's telling me to go back to Indiana, I'm telling, no, I'm not going home. Nope. There's that fight or fight thing again. I'm not going home. No, there's no way. I was humiliated. This guy was going to take away my bliss. This guy was stealing from me my deepest desire, my passion, my truth, my where my heart lied. I mean, dude, my purpose in life. He was stealing it from me. There's no way. I was fighting for it. And so then I'm trying to negotiate a deal that will kind of benefit the both of us without even know what I'm saying. I'm like, well, I get in his face. Am I still the drummer in your band? Now, you have to understand, this guy was like a Marine drill sergeant. He's the type of guy, that'd be like saying, he says, give me 100 push-ups, asshole. You go, nah, I'm not into it today. Or a boss going, you're fired. I'm like, no, I'm not.
No, I'm not doing it.
That's what the guy would, that's what basically he was saying. And I went, so I go, like, well, am I still your drummer? He went, well, he's kind of looking at me like, why is he asking? He says, yeah, but you're not playing on the record. I said, well, I'm going to go in the studio and I'm going to watch these session guys play on my tunes, and I'm going to learn from them, and I'll benefit from that, and you'll benefit because I'm your drummer, and you don't have to pay me. I think that was the key.
That was it.
That was the key line.
Money.
Yeah, it was money. I don't have to pay him. Well, sure.
Yeah, so stay as long as you want.
Stay as long as you want. Well, I did go there. I was mortified. See, I was embarrassed. There was no way I was going to go home. It was just too embarrassing. And I'd rather fly to Mars and live there by myself. So I did learn. It was humbling. I felt like the odd man out. A lot of self-realization. But the point is, I went after it. I wrote things down. I talked to the session guys. It was Rick Slosher and Ed Green, two great session guys. In a sidebar, Rick Slosher emailed me 4 years ago from Mexico, where he lives. He said, dude, congratulations. Dude, I'm so proud of you. I had a feeling you were going to make it. You had the right attitude, the right vibe, the right desire, the right everything. He says, it's so cool to see what you've come. So anyway, I go home. I set up an 8-hour-a-day practice routine, 7 days a week, Marine style, run 6 miles a day, lift weights, the whole thing. And I vowed, I'm going to be on the next record. I don't give a fuck what I go through. Let's go back to criteria. So I get this drum machine. Now this machine's replacing me. I'm devastated. I got replaced by 2 humans.
Wait a minute. Before we go on to that, who was the artist?
Oh, you're going to hear. I'm going to get to that.
Okay. So you're building it.
I'm setting it up.
Oh, man.
So, yeah. I mean, so I'm like devastated. A machine after, and I'm thinking, I'm going to get fired again. I grab the machine, grab the manual, and said, well, at least I'm going to program this thing. So I program a cool thing. Give it back to Don, and I'm like in the lounge, all bummed out, like, oh man, they're in there. I'm back here. I'm sweating. I'm embarrassed. I'm feeling fear. I'm feeling shame. I'm overwhelmed. What do I do? What's going to happen? And then all of a sudden, I'm called into the control room by my boss, and he goes, "Hey, Aronoff, we need a drum solo right here after the second chorus." And I'm like, "What? A drum solo on a ballad?" So. Now, what I didn't understand back then, and I understood now, was the purpose of a drummer, or a session musician for that matter. The purpose of a drummer is one thing and one thing only. Get the goddamn song on the radio to be number one. Mm-hmm. It ain't about me. It had nothing to do about me, except I'm the vehicle that can help bring a beat and a groove and some fills to the team, to the band, to make the song great. But it ain't about me. It's all about that song getting on the radio. What can I do to get that song on the radio? This is all new for me. So we spend a day, because back then, remember, drums were in vocal booths, because you could control the sound, muffle the head. But now John says, I want the biggest drum sound in the world, which is great for me. But we're in this big-ass room, which would be kind of like Studio A at Henson, which used to be A&M, where they did We Are the World. And as you well know, you got the close mics, you got the overheads, but now where do you put those room mics? Because they're going to pick up all the ambience of the room. And this was all new. And we're positioning mics at 15 feet, 20 feet, 25 feet, high, low, spread out. And you get a reflection from the close-up mics to the overheads into the room mics. And then you go through all this gear. There's a lot to deal with. Spend a day getting sounds. Now it's time for me to do something. So I thought, what can I play that's going to jump out of those speakers on the radio? See, I'm already thinking radio, car stereos. So I went boom, blam, like 1, 2, 3, and 4, and stopped. And everyone went like, cool. Simple, to the point. You got this kind of cool, slick drum machine, and all of a sudden, bam, Godzilla shows up. So then I was trying to copy what was on the drum machine, which was the drum part I originally was playing on the kick, snare, and hi-hat. So I go up the toms. I thought, okay, I'll go up the toms because everybody goes down the toms, and I'll play that rhythm because it relates to the song. And I hit a dead end, and now I'm in the control room, and now I got 9 people telling me what to do and what not to do. My head's spinning. I'm sweating. I'm like in fear of losing my job. My bliss is going to be taken away from me. This is it, man. Do or die. 9th inning, World Series, full count, and either I hit a home run and I kick ass, or I strike out and see you next year. That's how I felt. So I'm 50 feet heading back to the drum set, and I'm going, dude, you're going to get fired. 40 feet, what are you going to play? 30 feet, I'm not sure. 20 feet, dude, what are you going to play? You're going to get fired. 10 feet, shit, I don't know. 0 feet, turn around. They're all looking at me, smoking cigarettes, kind of like, all right, kid. And I'm looking at them, I look at the drum set. Look at them, I look at the drum set. Look at them, look at the drum set. Sit down, and then all of a sudden, ding, the light goes off. Well, maybe I'll use the same idea, but just do it differently. And that's the message. Sometimes just all you have to do is just look at the same thing that everybody else is looking at, but just tweak it as opposed to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Right.
And start all over.
Start all over.
Instead of starting over, figure out another way to use the information that's already there. And I did. So instead of playing on the beat, I went boom, blam, and I was playing the rhythm starting on 1. I shifted it to the end of 1. I have no idea why. Doesn't matter. I went boom, blam, and they went, wow, that's kind of cool. And then I went down the drums. Long story short, that was John Cougar Mellencamp's biggest hit ever, Jack and Diane.
Mm-hmm.
That was the band I got into. That's the band I auditioned for. Completely blew John's career up and completely, put me on the map. Like, who's this guy? I remember Harvey Mason saying, I heard that on the radio, and I pulled over and went, what? A drum solo on Top 100 radio that's still being played today, 38 years later? The funny thing is, when that song went to number 1, I was in the same room at the Chateau Marmont as when I got fired from the record before. And, I don't share this with that many people because it's just...
Well, this is just you and me, so
yeah.
This is okay.
Shh, be quiet. So in came the hookers. No, what I went through was I was so elated and so excited that I had pursued this mountain with daggers flying down at me in the rain and all these adverse conditions, and I achieved a huge, successful goal. But in 2 seconds, I became fearful. Can I do it again? Mm-hmm. I have the opportunity to do it again? This was not good enough for me. And once that didn't mean you're set for life or you're successful in life. I have no idea where that comes from, but that was what I was feeling. And the other thing is, people expect you, once you do something great, they expect that you can do it great every single time. And so do I. That's the pressure that's been on me, and I'm used to it. And I'm comfortable with that. It's just, I understand now. Now I understand. It may not come immediately, but it will come if you stay in the game. You can't score goals on a soccer team if you're on the bench.
True.
You gotta, and worse if you're off the team.
Yeah.
You got to be on the field. I don't care if you're naked with no cleats. Hold your nutsack and go kick the ball in the goal. Whatever it takes. So that was my fear. And for Mellencamp, he expected so much from all of us. I mean, when we were making records, so now he had the same fear. We were a perfect match for each other. This guy was piss and vinegar. And I didn't realize why he was like that till later. Till I wrote my book and looked back at my whole life. I realized, oh my God, the reason why he was so intense when I got in the band was he had already lost his record deal. He was this young kid that got a record deal. His manager was Bowie's manager, Tony DeFries. And they believed in this young kid. Because, see, John had charisma. His songwriting was okay, but he was a star. That he was. He wanted it so bad. Just like me. And he got this record deal. They spent like $1 million back then. I think it was on MCA. And they put a record out. And they're in the office in London. And Tony DeFries pushes the record across the table to John and says, "Here's your record, dude." And John looks at it and goes, "Who's Johnny Cougar?" I said, "Well, that's you." He says, "Well, my name's John Mellencamp." He says, "Well, it's Johnny Cougar if you want this record to come out." Now, that's a guy that came up with Ziggy Stardust. That was kind of a time where you came up with stage names. It was rock and roll. It was big back then. They don't have rock stars anymore. Back then, rock stars was awesome. We were superheroes. So they came up with this name. Well, John grew up in the Rust Belt, southern Indiana. He had uncles, man. You come home and you say your name is not Mellencamp, they're going to punch you right in the mouth and say, "Hey, boy, what's wrong with our heritage? What's wrong with our name, our family name?" I don't know if that's what happened, but I mean, I knew his grandpa and his uncles. These guys were proud men, and I understood that. But I'm just imagining, then John loses his deal. Not only does he lose his deal, but his name is Johnny Cougar. And now he's working for the telephone company in Seymour, Indiana. He's got a new baby. He got married when he was 17, got his wife.
So this was before he had a hit?
Yes, this is before.
What happened with that record? That record was just sitting there?
American Fool came later. That blew us up. I'm backing up. So what happened was, this is before I got in the band.
Oh, okay.
And John... I'm backing up, fans. This is in the late 70s. This is before I knew him. This is what made John so intense. That's my point. John finally decides, I can't do this. I can't climb telephone poles. He calls up every contact he has, and he's going to do a showcase, which is where your band plays in front of record company people, and they hope you get a deal. Goes up to Chicago, outside of Chicago, does a showcase. He thought it was just his band. It wasn't. It was 5 bands. He's pissed off, but it made him play so intensely. And Billy Gaff's first in command from London is there looking at another band, and Billy Gaff managed Rod Stewart. This guy sees John and sees a star. Calls up Billy, says, "I think I got a kid for you to check out." Bottom line is, he does get signed. And when I made Rod Stewart's record, he goes, "Dude, my money made John Mellencamp's career." And I get what he's saying. The money that came in to the manager, he invested in John Mellencamp. But that's the way the record business worked. I'm on 4 records that sold 40 million. Well, if the record company's making 85 cents on the dollar, that's like 85 cents times 40 million. You got a lot of money you can invest in new bands.
Sure.
So that's the way it works. So, and every company works that way. So, John, they make a record. It had a song called "I Need a Lover" on it. Release it in Australia. Does great. But they're scared to release it, or they don't want to release it in the USA. They make a new record and put that song on the record and release it in America, and now he's on MTV. They're like, "Wow, who is this guy?" Pat Benatar covers it. "I need a lover who won't drive me crazy." And it was cool. A chick singing that, and all of a sudden, who's this Johnny Cougar guy? Then I get in the band, and that's the record I didn't make. He had 2 songs in the top 40, and then American Fool, the record I made with Jack and Diane. First single was Hurt So Good, won 2 Grammys, sold millions of records. Put us on the map, and now we were an established band. But both me and John were in fear of doing it again. John's next record we did was Pink Houses. And it's got pink houses on it. Ain't that America for you and me? Little pink houses, and it had the Authority song. And the record is done and mastered. John calls me up one day and goes, I'm living in a house in Bloomington, Indiana. He goes, "Kenny, what are you doing?" I said, "I'm practicing the drums." That's all I did, you know. So I'm coming over. I got a new song. It's going to be the first single on the album. I'm like, well, John, the record's done. He says, no, we don't have a single. We need a single, the first single. We don't have a first single yet. See, this guy was fighting, still fighting. Comes over, and I'll precipitate this story by saying, John would come into rehearsals. We would work. This is old school. We'd work from 11 to 5, take a dinner break, work 7 to 11, 5 days a week, like a job. That's how we made it. We were on a little salary, but that's how we did. We practiced and worked hard every day. John came in one day and said, you know, I write the same songs, man. I'm thinking, no shit. He says, but I expect you guys to come up with parts to make these songs hits. I thought, what a jerk, but he was right. And now get into this, what that means. He says, I expect you guys to come up with parts and make these songs hits. And Kenny, listen, if somebody can come up with a better drum part than what you're playing for a song, you have to play it. And same with all you guys. We don't own our instruments. We don't own our parts. We're a band. We own each other's instruments and parts. And, you know, I thought John was a dick, like I said. But, dude, that is some serious teamwork, motivational type stuff that I speak about now. So, John comes over. I'm shitting my pants. He goes up to me and says, listen, this song's a fucking hit. Don't blow it. What do you think I'm thinking? I'm scared shitless to come up with the wrong part, and I'm intimidated, and my security blanket is to score, hit a home run. Anything less is bad. He starts playing on the acoustic guitar, all downstrokes. I sit down the drum set only about like 15 feet away, and I'm tapping my bass drum and hitting the snare drum with my finger because I don't want to make too much noise and play the wrong beat. If he likes it, I can play it louder. And I'm going do do got do 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 got do 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 got do do chika, and I hit the hi-hat in the hole. I've never played that beat before, never played it since. John liked it. That became Crumbling Down, our first hit on the record, a huge hit. We recorded the song, remastered, put the record out. First single, set up, I think, the Pink Houses, which became a huge hit. Sold millions of copies. Next record, now we're making records at home. We made on a pig farm. He took over his sister's shack. We called it the shack. I mean, it smelled like pigs, goats, horses right outside. There was nothing there. It was just next door was a pig farm. And we were making a record. Don Gaiman brought up a mobile unit from Criteria. We put it in this shack house, did all electrical shit, and that's when John said, I ain't making records anywhere but Indiana now. Then he took over a little house and basically copied what Rumbo Studios had, and Greg Edwards, an engineer, was our engineer. He helped come up with the plans. We built a studio. John still is making records. That was from 1986. Still making records there in his studio. And it got to the point where John wouldn't let record people come to the house to listen to the record. Rarely. He'd say, listen, you fuckers, you don't know how to make records. You sell records. I make the records. Because when we were making that record, American Fool, we were at Cherokee. The second time I came there... Oh, no. The Cherokee, the first time I was there was when I got fired. I redeemed myself recording Hurt So Good. I remember thinking, God damn, man, I'm playing all these simple beats. It's like, I wish I could play something cool like Stewart Copeland from The Police or Bonham or even Phil Collins or Neil Peart from Rush or Jeff Porcaro, and I'm playing this. But then I got it. I heard the... I could hear the simplicity and the feel and the blueprint of my entire emotional self coming through those speakers. And I went, holy shit. It's not the part, it's the feel. I mean, the part's important, but the feel is more important. I got it. I could feel it. They brought in a record label guy, suit jacket. He listened to that song and went, I don't get it. Nah, I don't get it. You guys should try to be more like Neil Diamond. John walked him to the door, kicked him in the ass right on Fairfax. We lost our deal, but then somebody played that song, Hurt So Good, when the record was done, and it took off like wildfire on 2 radio stations, became a number 2 hit single, stayed at number 2 forever, As soon as it started coming down, they released Jack and Diane. Jack and Diane came up, got in the top 10. Hurt So Good stayed in the top 10. Both songs were in the top 10 the same time for multiple weeks. Jack and Diane goes to number 1. Oh my God, it was like we were superstars. And then comes out, and then we create a new sound called Scarecrow. And that was with basically John. I'll never forget, we were making this record, and this was the beauty of having your own studio and having an open budget. You could make a record and throw it away and start again. That's how you get good material.
Yeah.
There are people that spend 2 years in their little home studio by themselves because I understand they have no budget. But when you get a band together and you got a melting pot of ideas and you can work through all kinds of crap and then redo it, start again, redo it, you're learning and you're getting to the next level by going through this process. You can't speed a bottle of wine tasting good. You got to wait for it to do its thing. So one day, John said, I need a violin on this little song for his grandma. It was some old folk song. He wanted to put his grandma on the record, which was good. And then John said, hey, double this line on this song called Scarecrow. And then he said, told the keyboard player, pull out your accordion. John was into experimenting. So we put the accordion and the violin together, and all of a sudden, bam, this Americana sound with heavy, loud, powerful drums driving it was like a huge dichotomy, and it was unique. And we redid the whole record with that sound, or most of the record, and that put us into selling out arenas with no opening act. We had 3 hours of material, no opening act, just us, selling out arenas like the Forum, 360 degrees, nobody but us. We do an intermission, and that was it. And we traveled the world. Then we came out with Jubilee, which had Check It Out, Cherry Bomb, I forget some of the songs, but we continued that, and we were rock stars, private jets, sang at Four Seasons, Ritz, Collins is big. We were big time.
Yeah.
And then John quit. Now this is chapter 2 or chapter 3 in my life. John one day, last show of the Jubilee tour in Milwaukee Fest, comes up to me, and I envision I had 2 girls in my arm, bottle of champagne, ready to party. Last night, let's rock and roll. John comes up with a bonus check, back then when they had bonus checks, and threw it at me and said, don't spend it one place, I quit. I'm quitting the music business for 3 years. I'm in total shock. What? Now, what I didn't know back then, what I know now, is that he was fried. He was burnt out. Mm-hmm. And he had made millions. We didn't. We were just hired. We were hired guns. I mean, the image was we were in the band. We were the band, but we were hired guns. So I just gotten divorced. I had a house payment. I had a car payment. And he's quitting? Now, I'd already started doing sessions. And I freaked out, put the bottle of champagne down, went into my dressing room and started reflecting. And I was like, going like, this sucks. Spent the night reflecting. And the next day I went, you know what? The glass ain't half empty. The glass ain't half full. The glass is full. It's always full. I'm going to take this shit and turn it into gold. Okay, now I've played with one superstar for 8 years. Now I'm going to go play with all the other ones. Mm-hmm. And I came out to L.A., and I said, all right. So I was doing sessions, and everybody I knew on the face of the earth, I was calling up saying, oh, I want to do sessions. I'm in L.A. I want to do sessions. I'm in L.A. I want to do sessions. And then finally I got a big break. It was Don Was. Don Was when he broke. He was the songwriter and producer of Was Not Was, but he got this I get a call from this guy, Don Was. And he says, hey, Kenny, it's Don. Don Was Not Was. I went, oh, awesome, dude. Dude, what's up, man? He says, man, how would you like to make an Iggy Pop record? I went, are you fucking kidding me? Dream come true. He says, come and meet me at the record plant. First of all, I didn't know he was a white guy, the way he was talking. Right. So I walk in there. I go up to Sweet Pea and Sir Edward, I forget his first name, the 2 background singers, and the guitar player, Afro-American. And I said, hey, you guys, Don Sweep goes, I didn't know Don was. I'm like, oh, shit, sorry. I'm so sorry. He's laughing at me. And I go over to this white guy. He's got a headband. And I says, Dan, I just made a fool of myself. Do you know what Don is? He goes, I'm Don. It was so funny. And he's laughing his head off. He says, yeah, well, Iggy would like to meet you. So I go up to his house on Laurel Canyon the next day, and I meet Iggy. And Iggy's like, Iggy, yeah, man. And we were talking. He used to play timpani in the orchestra in high school in Detroit.
Oh, really?
And so we shared that. He likes me. I make the record. One day when we're making the record, Don had to leave to go to the Grammys. I didn't give a shit about the Grammys. I played on them, but I was more like, I got to kick ass on this record. I was very focused on doing my job. But somebody yells at us, you got to come in. Don's on the podium. He'd won 2 Grammys for Nick of Time for Bonnie Raitt and one for producing Love Shack for the B-52s.
Right.
The phone rang off the hook. Next thing you know, I'm doing Bob Dylan's record with Don, Bob Seger with Don, Elton John with Don, and on and on and on and on and on. And I've been working with him ever since. That was 1989. And he put me on the map as I became this session guy. And then all of a sudden, word was out, and next thing you know, I'm making records nonstop in L.A. Then I go after Nashville. In Indiana, I live 4.5 hours driving to Nashville. 4.5 hour flight to L.A. 1.5 hours to New York. I went, I'm going to do all of them. And at that point, they would fly me. There were budgets to fly me anywhere I want for one song. And that's what I did. I actually started becoming and when I say sessions with country, it ain't the country stuff that's on the radio now. That's just more like shitty 80s rock music. This was like Johnny Cash, George Jones, Chris Christopherson, Willie Nelson, Waylon Jennings.
You played with those guys?
All of them. And then I played with them all together on the Highwaymen record.
Oh, cool.
But I played with them, recorded individually with them. Then I actually played with Carl Perkins, Jerry Lee Lewis, Little Richard, Ray Charles, all these iconic, I could go on and on. Conway Twitty, his last performance I did this record with Don was where they basically put R&B with country. So I'm doing like Sam Moore with Conway Twitty. Conway Twitty dies a month later. I did B.B. King with George Jones. I did Tanya Tucker with somebody. I did Patti LaBelle with Travis Tritt. I mean, it just went on and on. I mean, it was Aaron Neville with Patricia Yearwood, who it was unbelievable. And anyway, and I'm playing with some of the new country artists like Travis Tritt and John Adams, and it was just unbelievable time. Nashville was still Nashville, hadn't started to blow up yet. So I was working with just really authentic, real badass country artists. And I was working in L.A. a lot. I did everybody, and I did Bon Jovi, Blaze of Glory. I did Meatloaf, Bat Out of Hell 2. I'll do anything for love, but I won't do that. And then I would be doing, Alice Cooper. Then I was doing all the girls, Michelle Branch, Avril Lavigne, Melissa Etheridge, Celine Dion. I did B.B. King with Bonnie Raitt. I'm trying to jump around. Tony Iommi from Sabbath. Rod Stewart, Elton John. Santana. I mean, it was all over the place. I had the skill set because of my classical training to write and read music. So I could do multitask. I could handle many sessions, TV, tours, because I'd write everything out. And then it took me a long time, but got to the point where I could read where it sounded like it was live. And I could do full takes. And I put the two worlds together. So suddenly I have 2 careers. Session guy and then being part of a cool band. And I remember getting called to do the Elton John tour. Were the hardest decisions to make, and I was not ready to leave Mellencamp. And I remember going to the Four Seasons on a payphone back then, and I had to call up Elton John's management, and I went, basically, I said, no. She says, what?
So this was before John quit, obviously.
This
He was
before.
he was
This is
still
after
touring.
John quit.
Oh, after he
I
quit.
came back in the band. See, what happened was John quit in 1980. What was it? 1988 at the end of the tour, and he quit. But he didn't end up quitting. He ended up. We did Big Daddy, which was a whole different type of record, it was soft and more down. Ross Hogarth was the engineer, but he was basically laying low. Made a movie, and then when he got back, we got back together in '91. I got back in the band, but that's where me and John started butting heads. Before, I was on a retainer. I would be there at his beck and call. But the retainer was so small, I was making more in one day than the retainer for 1 month.
Yeah.
So I just went, I took myself off the retainer, which really, as I look back, was kind of like, I mean, I understood why I was doing it, but that was kind of like telling John, that was like saying, it's like, I'm not saving you money, I'm demanding my freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And we never spoke about it, but then when he called, I'd be like, I remember I was doing a Little Feat record with the #1 artist from Denmark. Richie Hayward was out with Eric Clapton. I'm playing with Little Feat in the studio, making a record with the Madonna from Denmark. And I get a call, John wants you tomorrow. And I went, I can't come. I'm in the studio. Cancel. I'm like, no. John says, look, you can do these sessions, but when I need you, I need you. I went, John, they build sessions around rhythm sections. In other words, they schedule everything around whether me and Lee Sklar or me or whoever else can be together. I can't, and if I can't give them my word, then I'm gonna lose business.
Yeah.
He did not lie. He hung up on me. That was the beginning of the end, and there was a lot of headbutting, and eventually I left after the Bob Seger tour, which was incredible experience, joyful, sold out arenas, private jet, excellent, the best hotels, huge salaries that they don't even exist anymore, and it was just wonderful. And we split.
Well, one of the big problems like that we all run into, people want us to be like, they want you to be their drummer or you be their engineer or whatever, and they want you to be available to them, but they don't want to pay you for that privilege of you being available for them, and we all have to make a living.
Yeah, that's exactly true. I've been running through that same thing with an artist I've been playing with for a long time. And they say, well, we don't do what they call retainers. I said, I understand. That's why I book other work.
Yeah.
Because what I make from you does not pay the bills.
No.
And I also want to realize, as much success as I can, in a very, very difficult music business. I call this business the horse and buggy business. And the cars showed up 15 years ago. Mm-hmm. Dude, it's just, if a business does not bring money in to then reinvest in the business, you're in deep shit. Now, maybe Spotify's making money, maybe iTunes is making money, the record labels, made deals with them, the artists, songwriters, producers all got fucked once again.
Yeah.
It's just what it is. There's no discussion. They made deals. Record labels did not embrace downloading. They missed it, but then they redeemed themselves by making deals because the record labels owned the masters to, all these great recordings. And shit, man, I went in and redid My Sharona, which, by the way, is an extremely involved drum track. It's not just do-do-ga-do-do-ga. It's like very involved. I wrote out every single note. I got every single mic. It was 12 mics they recorded, so I could hear every single mic what it was doing and wrote out every note. And there was actually drum program in the bass drum that doubled the bass drum in only certain sections. There was all kinds of shit going on. I found out what drums used, what mics used, and I put that up with 3 very, very intense pages of music. And I remember telling my wife, I'm going to go practice. I'll be back in 2 hours. I called her up after an hour and said, I'll see you in the morning. This is really hard. And because Bruce Gary, that was his name, did a lot of technical stuff at the end. We did the entire drum track, note for note. They put his track up in the right speaker, mine up in the left, and matched them note for note. That's how I nailed every single note. And then they redid the bass guitars, and they used the second best vocal. The label didn't own that. The master they owned, but they didn't own any of the other takes. And now,
Right.
now the band can make their own deals with movies and commercials.
Yeah.
Because the label could do this. This is just an example. Labels could go, oh, you want My Sharona? That'll be $500,000. And then the movie people go, no way. Or the commercial goes, no way. What if the band goes, hey, you can have this song for $200,000? And they go, okay, we'll make that. Now the band is making some sort of income.
Yeah.
And they wrote the song. Now, in all fairness to the label, they put the money up to record the song, and that's the deal they made. That's just the way it worked. They own the master because they put the money up. Now, there's all kinds of new deals going on. I remember when I was on tour with the Smashing Pumpkins, I think Billy told me that, at a certain point, he struck an amazing deal. Billy's brilliant. He struck a deal where at a certain point in his life, the masters go back to him. That was a long time ago. And it was smart. And probably when the Pumpkins came out, nobody thought they would be as big as they were. So the label went, sure, no problem.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's brilliant. That's phenomenal. That was a victory for the musician and the artist. Anyway, so...
A lot of artists have done that because I've done it with them.
You've done
redone. We did an album like that with James Ingram.
Oh, wow.
And Christopher Cross has re-recorded like Sailing and Ride Like the Wind.
That's awesome.
So when they want to use, when you hear those songs in movies, which they have been many times, it's a re-record. So they can make, because the artist is getting screwed because they're not making nearly the money that the record company was making on those deals. Smart business.
It's smart business. I mean, we're adapting. So I have two careers going, and then I've been, I've toured with, when the Mellencamp thing ended, I had already been with Bob Seger. Next thing was my hookup with John Fogerty, which I'd been with him for 25 years. The songwriter, producer, genius of Creedence Clearwater. And I'll never forget, I should tell this story. This is really good. Do I have time to tell a story?
Yeah, sure.
This is a cool
story. For you?
Yeah.
Of course.
So... usually the way it works is I have drums stored in L.A., New York, and Nashville. I even had some in Germany and Japan. But the point is that when I get to the studio, my drums are all set up for me. Cartage companies, you pay them a certain amount of money. They set your drums up there. I'd have them bring like 3 bass drums, 50, 75 snare drums, 250 cymbals, because you're camped out there for 2 weeks, sometimes 3, and I want to have everything. And... But on the Fogerty record, they said, just bring your sticks. I'm like, what? Don't you want my sound? No. Long story short, I get there. John's tuning the snare drum. He spent 5 years preparing for this record. He hadn't recorded music for a very, very long time. He pretty much quit the music business. Spent 5 years practicing 5 hours a day and figured out what snare drum he liked, what kick drum he want, what drum head, what beater, everything. I get in the studio, and he's got it all down. And he had Ross Garfield from Drum Doctors tune the toms. That's it. So I'm like, all right. So I get in there. Plays the song twice. He plays the song. I make a chart. Listen to it again. Then we go out and start recording. Bass, drums, and guitar. And John's playing guitar and singing. We do 2 takes, go and listen to it. Says a few things, go back out. Do two takes, go back and listen. This is all to tape. 2 takes and listen to it. And I'm like, wow, that's pretty good. After the 8th take, I went, you got it, man. Sounds amazing. He said, I still want to revisit it a little bit. So we do it for 3.5 hours, and then we have a lunch break. Then we do another song. At the end of the day, John goes, dude, I really like working with you. And would you come back tomorrow? I went, absolutely. Come back tomorrow. I'm like, all right. What songs are we doing today? The engineer said, John wants to do the same 2 songs. I'm like, why? I don't know. He just wants to do it. I'm like, all right. So I'm like, what did I do wrong? So I'm trying harder. John's loving this. Now they look back. He's loving it. He says, oh, this is awesome. Same 2 songs. Next day, he wants me to come back again. Same 2 songs. Thursday, I'm going to kill myself. Same 2 songs. Friday, same 2 songs. He wants me to come back the next week. I'm like, please, not the same 2 songs. 2 new songs.
Oh.
So we spent a month doing this. I was the 30th drummer after 5 years of recording for that Blue Moon Swamp record that won a Grammy. And he said, you're the drummer I've been looking for my whole life. That's what he said. And I played with him pretty much on and off for 25 years. It was one tour. They didn't know what they were doing, and I got the Smashing Pumpkins tour. So there's no way I wasn't going to do that, because I was a huge fan, and this was a huge sort of a new thing to do, and the tour was set. It was everybody wanted that tour, and I got the tour. Man, it's huge. So I did it, and then I went back to Fogerty. But the thing is that, and John was that intense about trying to be great at what he does, you know, and I had to respect him for that, man. We've done it. I did a 6-hour sound check with him once, because the reason why is because part of it was 2 hours of it was they decided the day of a show at the Novo Theater to get a new sound guy and a new monitor guy, and they wired everything wrong. The inputs on the mixer up front was different from what the monitor guy had. And I have a 16-channel mixer that I get from the monitors. So I'm the one that busted them. Like, what's going on here? I got John's guitar and 3 faders, and they're all squirting blood. It should just be a quick setup. And they tracked it down. But so anyway, so Fogerty, and then I went on tour at the Pumpkins, more Fogerty, Melissa Etheridge on and off for 10 years, Joe Cocker on and off for 10 years. Chickenfoot, the supergroup, Chad Smith is a member of. He couldn't do it because he was with Chili Peppers. I went out with, I went out with the original Jefferson Airplane back in 1990. Went out with Michelle Branch for a couple of years because I wanted to try something that was different. I'd made her videos. I made 2 of her records. I thought that from a branding standpoint, it makes sense. You can see me in the videos and you can hear me on the records. Mm-hmm. I'm not just a side man. I've been part of this. And then I went out. I've subbed for, like Goo Goo Dolls when the drummer couldn't do it. Styx twice when their drummer couldn't do it. Because I can write everything out and learn everything note for note and do it the way their drummer did it as best as I can.
Right. You're going to always have your flair.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And they understand. The main thing is I keep them on. I'm super, super professional. I know how to work in these situations. I'm aware of problems before they come. It's not just the drumming anymore. That's what some people I work for don't understand. It's not just the drumming. It's the whole experience I have. I know everything that's going on stage, lights, everything to do with this whole package. And when you're doing stuff like the Kennedy Center honors, and that became the next level I got into, where now I'm doing these huge TV shows where you have to be able to read and write music because they're making changes right up to an hour before you go on stage. And you're playing with Sting, Elton John, Steven Tyler, Chris Cornell, Lady Gaga, Bruno Mars, one after another, on and on and on. You do not want to fuck up. You fuck up, you're fired. It ain't a joke, man. This ain't no hand-holding.
Well, there's no room for
There's
error.
no room.
There is.
16 cameras shoot, and they're recording it. Drummer's got to be perfect. If you're the kid that wants to be hand coddled and have your hand held, you don't belong there.
No.
And this applies.
I
do all these. I did, the Greg Allman tribute, the Johnny Cash tribute, the Dr. John tribute. I just did the Merle Haggard tribute. 15-piece band, and I was controlling the band with being the drummer with brushes on 75% of those songs. That is a whole new thing. To be able to command authority and tempo and groove with brushes, with a 15-piece band. First of all, the band was outrageously badass. Every one of those people could be the MD. Everyone had great time and great feel. Don was the MD. But, man, it's like, I call it the Tom Brady effect. For those who don't know who Tom Brady is, he's the quarterback for the New England Patriots, one of the baddest mofos ever. And when he walks on the field, everybody knows he can play football. But when he walks on the field, he has a persona. He has a presence that's kingly and masterful because he knows this game inside and out. He knows everything his teammates are doing and what the other 11 guys on the other side are doing. He knows what the coaches are thinking on both sides. He knows everything. You're not just getting a talented quarterback. You're getting super, super experience. And his team is excited with the potential of what this guy's going to do, which makes them play better. The other team Even though Tom Brady's the enemy, they are in awe and honor to be on the field with this guy. The stadium, the fans are like, holy shit, that's Tom Brady. He can do things in the last 2 minutes that no quarterback can do because his team is brought to another level. And the coaches know he can do anything they tell him to do. The people watching from all over the world have the same feeling. That's who Tom Brady is. That's the guy I aspire to be. It's not just the way I play drums. I can list 100 drummers that are great. But there's only a few that have massive experience, and I'm just lucky that I grew up when I did to get all this experience and work through all the transitions in the music business and still relevant and still hungry to do it. And that means you have to be physically, mentally, and emotionally strong and in shape and want to contain this, keep going strong. Look, when I'm doing a show with John Fogerty, or anybody for that matter, before sound check, I do a 30-minute warm-up. On my pad. If I don't have a pad, I do it on my legs. Both my feet and hands are moving. They're specifically designed to make me sound great at sound check. Before the show, do the same thing. And when I'm really nutso, I do it before I go to bed so I wake up warmed up. Wow. That's what I do. Because the reason why is because it makes me sound great. And I am only human, and I'm going to make mistakes. And I'm going to fuck up. And that's just the way it goes. I'm never going to be as great as I want to be, but I'm willing to spend the rest of my life trying to be as great as I can be. And that's like the running back in football. Does he score a touchdown every time he gets the ball? Badass mofo in the NFL? No. But he keeps trying, play by play, game by game,
exactly.
Season by season. And he knows that. He accepts that. Once again, if you're looking for the little coddling and, your mommy to help you or the trophy just because you showed up, get rid of all of that. That ain't going to help you. That's just slowing you down.
Well, this is what it is to be a professional, right?
Yeah.
That word professional means that you got to be trying to be at the absolute best.
At the
and
best.
Better all the time, right?
Yeah.
Now, I have a question. You rattled off so many names.
Yeah.
But I have one just out of curiosity. So what did you do with Joe Cocker?
Oh, man. Joe. Oh, God. Joe's amazing. I toured with him on and off for 10 years, and I got to record 2 albums with him.
Cool.
Dude, this guy, people may not realize, he was the biggest rock star in the world at one point.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest.
Mad Dogs and Englishmen.
Yeah, Mad Dogs and Englishmen.
Yep. It was amazing record, yeah.
Funny story, I walked in the studio to do a record for Joe Cocker once, and I see 2 drum sets. I'm like stunned. Don is laughing his ass off the control room, comes out and goes, oh, man, I want you to play on some songs, and Jim Keltner would play on. I couldn't figure out which ones you should, and why don't you guys figure it out? I went in there, and I'm laughing, and Jim's like, hey, Kenny. He says, man, you do whatever you want, and I'll figure out what to do. We played on the record together, and sometimes he'd play kick drum and hi-hat. I'd play snare and toms. And then sometimes he'd play shaker and kick drum, and I'd play snare, toms, and cymbals.
Is that seems like that would be hard to do.
It was hard, but we did it.
Because you're used to using all your...
What you do is use your ears. You just listen.
Wow.
I think that song was called Organic. It was cool as shit. And I just talked to Jim Keltner. For anybody who doesn't know, Jim Keltner, as much as I've done, he did 15 years before I started doing sessions.
Oh, yeah, he's big time.
He's big time. And Jim, we did the same thing on Michael Penn, Sean Penn's brother's record. I walked in, and Tony Berg, the producer, was laughing his ass off as I'm walking into the studio. I think it was Cherokee, and I'm stunned. I'm seeing 2 drum sets. I'm like, what? He says, I couldn't figure out if you or Jim should play. I decided last minute, you guys both play together. I'll put Jim in the left speaker and you in the right. So then the third one was Jim got me in on it. I go over to Ocean Way where the Rolling Stones are doing Bridges to Babylon. Don was producing. I walk in. There's Jim and Charlie Watts and Keith Richards and everybody, not Mick Jagger. And Charlie Watts is doing his solo record, a jazz record, in the back room. And in this first room is Keith Richards. And there was a time where Keith Richards would do songs one day, and then Mick Jagger would come in and do it another day. And eventually Don Was said, wait. Can't be the Rolling Stones unless we all record together.
Yeah, I was like, why did...
It's just they were in their own...
Why are they using different drummers anyway?
But they weren't using different drummers. They were using what it was like Charlie was always playing, but they did an interesting thing where they brought other musicians in to give them kind of another influence. So Jim Keltner would play percussion behind Charlie or play kick and snare or something, but ultimately they didn't use very little of our stuff. I ended up on Bridge to Babylon on one song. I think it was Bucket, but I'll swear to God if I can hear it. But what happened was Jim said, humble Jim goes, hey, you know, Charlie, you should use Kenny on some of your songs. He plays really different type of percussion. And Charlie went, okay. We went back there. He saw what I did, and he's a gentleman. He's invited me the next day. And I remember Jim saying, you know, that's a big honor. If he didn't want you, he wouldn't be inviting you. I kept coming back. Kept inviting me back. Now, you have to understand, from 12 to 6, I was rehearsing with Fogerty for a tour. First time he was going to play the Creedence songs in 20 years. From 6 to 7, I drove to Rumbo Studios and recorded with Roy Bittan from Springsteen's band on a record he was producing. And from midnight to 5 in the morning, I was recording with the Rolling Stones.
Oh, my God.
That was my 2 weeks.
You weren't getting much sleep.
No, and on the weekend, Bon Jovi. Those were the days.
Wow.
Those were the days.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's
so...
amazing.
Yeah, man. A quick little story about we're doing a recording. It's 4 in the morning, and Charlie's playing, and Mick and Keith are there. Mick, I don't know if Mick or Keith were playing acoustic guitar at the beginning, and I'm playing a gourd with a brush. And Mick comes up to me. This is a compliment to Mick. He goes, "Hey, man, I like what you're doing on that gourd, but stay away from Charlie's hi-hat feel." And the thing that I loved about that was that he understood that Charlie was a huge member of the team of the Rolling Stones. He was a big member of the sound, the Rolling Stones.
Well, yeah, and he has a unique style, too.
Exactly.
Yeah,
so, but
absolutely.
a lot of lead singers might think, well, it's all me. It's all about me. Not Mick. He understands that Rolling Stones is Charlie Watts, is Keith Richards, is Mick Jagger. They're all important. I talk about teamwork, and the 3 elements of being a team player is to serve the song, serve the artist, serve the band, serve the producer, serve everybody. It's not about you. It's about the song or about the ultimate goal, which is recording, is to get on the radio, be number 1. But in a live situation, is ultimately to get a sound that makes this band, this unit, amazing. The second part is creativity, which is, everybody is creative in their own unique way because there's no 2 people on the planet the same. So we all have to be, we all have creativity in us, even though you may think you don't, you do. Nobody has the ideas you have. And I encourage people to use those, bring them out, like I had to with Mellencamp all the time, constantly. It's still scary sometimes. Oh, my God, I don't know what I'm going to do. And I have a formula for creativity, which is always think of the obvious, then embellish the obvious, embellish it even more. And the fourth way is to step out of the box and do something that that has nothing to do with the obvious. And you at least have a starting point of creativity for the people you're working for. And the third element of teamwork, in my mind, to make you a good member of an epic team, is to always be trying to get better. Because if you don't, you lose position. You lose relevance. You have to be always trying to get better. In this world, things are changing so fast and so rapidly that you've got to stay on top of it, or you're going to lose your place. Look what happened to our music business. I've made moves that have kept me relevant, and yeah, man, I'm writing my second book. It's more about how to become successful and stay successful. My first book, Sex, Drums, Rock and Roll, was basically my autobiography. But this one, I'm going to do a documentary, and it's not even going to be necessarily about everything I've done. It's going to be about something bigger. It'll have reference to what I've done. I do speaking now, and I really enjoy that.
Like motivational speaking,
Inspirational
or
speaking.
drum?
No, not drum clinics. This is inspiration. I just did a Bliss Talks speech in Redwood City with 7 other speakers. One was the CEO of Uggs Boots, and it was about how to find your bliss. And as I said, in order to find your bliss, you have to realize what your purpose in life is first. And I invite people to find their purpose in life. And the way you do that is you put your head your thoughts. You see, ideas are thoughts, words are thoughts, but feelings are the truth, and the truth and feelings together are who you are, and who you are is where your bliss exists, where your purpose exists. You got to put your head away and go to your heart and feel what you're feeling. That's not easy to do. It's easy. Someone says, "How do you feel?" You go, good. No, but yeah, I mean, but how do you feel? Really, how do you feel? And why? That's a hard exercise. But that's where your answers are. And then you can decide what to do after that. So I lecture on that, and I've been working hard at it. It's not just something that popped into my head. I'm actually working and I'm working deeper and deeper to inspire people. Because like I said, my purpose is to make people feel good. Now, I do it by playing music, but now I'm doing it with inspiration to, inspire people. And that makes me feel good. So I'm still doing what makes me feel good. I'm just have different platforms now.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody asked me the other day, "Dude, what more can I do to be great in the music business?" So I said, "Dude, it looks like you're doing everything that I would do, but maybe once you do this, once you get in a dark room, shut your eyes and think about the possibility of something else that you're not even aware of. Something in your heart." That was his exercise. Go off and do that. Shut your eyes and think about all the possibilities. You may not think of anything on Monday, but Tuesday, now you're used to thinking about what pops up in you. Maybe it's raising dogs. Maybe it's this. But when those things come up, there lies your deepest passion, and that's where your heart is, and there's where your truth is, and your deepest desire is, and there's where your higher purpose may be right there, and you don't even know it.
Wow, what a life you've led.
Yeah.
And so who are you working with like right now?
Believe it or not, I'm working with I never thought I would, but I'm working with Jerry Lee Lewis. Whenever he goes on, I play gigs with him.
Wow.
I just finished doing a summer tour with John Fogerty. I'm not playing with him right now, but then I'm going out with this cool super group, Doug Pinnick from King's X, me, and Joe Satriani from Joe Satriani and Chickenfoot. And we're going to be a power trio on the Hendrix Experience tour next year, March 3rd through April 6th. I got my own band with Fabrizio Grossi called a Supersonic Blues Machine, which features Billy Gibbons. I have the Latin Grammy Awards I'm going to be doing where I'll be playing with multiple artists. I've never done the Latin Grammy Awards. This will be cool. Another TV show. I've got a super show coming up on December 2nd, Guitar Rocks. It's a tribute. We're going to do it at the Novo Theater. It's a tribute. It's a charity for things like the veterans and other causes. But I'll be playing with Sammy Hagar, Stephen Stills, John Mayer, Joe Bonamassa, Dave Navarro, and the list goes on and on and on. It's another one of these shows where I play with everybody. I also have another big tour next year, possibly going out with Corey Hart in arenas in Canada. This guy was a superstar, and I made many records with him in the past. He's an incredible human being and wrote some badass songs. I just recorded in Nashville with Bob Ezrin, who's one of the greatest producers ever and brilliant. Working on editing my second book, a documentary that I mentioned, and damn, there's so many sessions in my studio. I still get calls to do. Last time I'm working with Desmond Child, who wrote many, many hits for like people like Bon Jovi and Aerosmith and Joan Jett, and I think he just did something that Barbra Streisand's singing on. I mean, this guy's got 60, maybe 60 number one hits. Wow. Desmond Child, yeah. It just keeps up. I can't even remember everything I'm doing. It just keeps unveiling all the time. Billy Gibbons, I've been going out and playing with him for different things. So yeah, my plate is full.
Are you leaving any work left for the rest of the drummers in the world?
I don't know. I don't know, and I'm sorry if I've taken all your work. I can't help it. I have a big appetite.
Man. Well, you're mostly in shape enough to do it. I can see that. Yeah, you're always in good shape. I know mentally and physically you're always that. You got a nice little. We're here at your studio,
Uncommon Studios, LA.
Uncommon Studios, yeah. And so you have a nice studio here. People send you stuff via the internet,
yeah,
and then you play on it, and then you do a few takes. You send them back the takes, and they can pick and choose what they want, right?
I'll send them 3 takes. If people want to hire, just go to my. You can just go to my website www.kennyaronoff.com, and it'll take you to my studio website, which is www.uncommon Uncommon Studios with an S, LA.com, and there's a form you fill out, or just email me from my website, and I'll tell you what the prices are. And I treat everybody the same, unless it's with massive budget. And I'll give you 1 take is a certain fee, 2 takes a little less for each take, and then 3 or more is a little bit less. But the quality, you cannot possibly program what I do. And I have an engineer. I have very, very hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of very expensive gear, as you saw, and I do complete takes. You can't program that. If you can come close, but it's going to take you a week or 2 weeks, and I can do 3 takes, in 15 minutes. Mm-hmm. I write every single note out before I record. I practice it at home. I come in, run through it once, and then bam, bam, bam.
There you go.
Or whatever it takes to make it what I think is like literally high-level grade recording.
And this kind of came about, this kind of work came about with the change in the music business, where whatever they pay you, that's still cheaper for them than saying, Kenny, okay, come down to Capitol. And so now they have studio time, they got an engineer, they've got
it's way
your
cheaper.
cartage, and it's not as convenient for everybody. So it's a pretty cool way of doing it, actually. This way you have your drums, you've got your setup the way you normally.
I did Avril Lavigne. I did some songs for Avril Lavigne. I don't know if they made the record, but the producer was smart. He went, we could go to a big studio, Capitol Studios, which could be $1,500, $2,000 a day for the studio. My studio is free. That's part of the price. And he says, but we're going to be if you have great sounds, we're going to be chasing your sounds. And I'll tell you what, I'll send you a recording of my studio, because it's not a big room like Capitol Studios has, or Henson, or the Village, or East West. Those rooms, I can't compete with that. But I get killer sounds. Same thing I did with Sammy Hagar, and they listen to it and I go, oh man, that's really good. That's good enough. And I'm trying to give them as an alternative. I'd rather be in the big room, but this is way faster. I can literally come in here in 20 minutes. I'm recording because everything's up, ready to go.
Yeah, you're all set up.
And
already.
I've dialed it in over 6 years with an engineer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's so high grade that an engineer can then take what I've done and the tweaks they make. You're getting great sounds, great feel, great mics, great preamps, great everything, and then enough to work with.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. Well, Kenny, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to sit here and talk to me and to be a part of my project.
Thank
I appreciate it very much.
It's an honor.
And it was great meeting you. You and I met, for the listeners, we met doing a David Pack. I don't want to call it a tribute band, but it was a really cool couple of shows that we did together. And I got to meet you, and we ended up flying together and riding in the van together, and we got to know each other, and it's been a real pleasure.
You too, man. I'm so glad that we could do this together. This is great.
All right. Well, Kenny, I think we've got enough.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say goodbye, and you can say goodbye to your fans, because I'm sure they're all going to be listening to this one.
Well, everybody out there, I hope I get to meet all of you somewhere someday. I'm going to continue to do great things because I love what I do, and I hope I inspire you and make you feel good.
All right. Thanks, Kenny.
All right, Ross.
Bye-bye.
Yep.
The Rossaround Backstage Podcast wants to thank my good friend, Tim Hines, for the original music that you are listening to now. We are currently looking for sponsors for the Rossaround Backstage Podcast so that we can continue to bring you interesting stories like the one you just heard. I can be reached through Facebook or email me at rosspallone.com. Thank you for listening.